This is a comparison between Krea 2 Turbo and Z-Image Turbo in terms of speed, image quality, and prompt adherence. So let's first set up our workflow. Again, this is a very simple one, so we can build it within less than 2 minutes. As before, first let's add 2 image preview nodes and 1 image compare node. This will be our output. Then let me rename it to Krea 2 versus Z-Image. Connect Krea 2 output to point A and Z-Image output to point B. Next, let's load the VAE decoder models. For Krea 2, we're going to use the official VAE, which is the Qwen image VAE. For Z-Image, we will need to choose AE.SafeTensors. Next, we will load the K-sampler node. Set the step to 8 and CFG to 1. Then duplicate the K-sampler for the Z-Image branch. Because they are both turbo models, we can use the exact same parameters for the K-samplers. Then let's load the prompt box. Now because Krea 2 and Z-Image uses different clip models to interpret our prompt, we have to use 2 sets of clip loader and prompt box. For the Krea 2 branch, we need to choose the Qwen 3VL4B clip model and change the type to Krea 2. Then for the Z-Image branch, we need to choose Qwen 3.4B model and leave the type as stable diffusion. Next, we can load our diffusion models, which is Krea 2 Turbo and Z-Image Turbo, and connect them to their K-samplers. And just like before, we're going to feed the exact same CR seed, empty latent, and text prompt into both branches to keep the comparison fair. Let's also color group these same parameters so it is clear and easy to understand. Now our workflow is set up, we can start looking for some prompts. First, I'm going to choose this picture and feed the screenshot to Gemini for a description. Let's copy and paste it to our prompt box and hit the Run button. All right, now we've got our first generation. Let's first calculate the generation speed. The Krea 2K sampler took 24.837 seconds to finish, where the Z-Image K sampler took 18.792 seconds. So the Z-Image is 32% faster than the Krea 2 model. Next, let's take a look at the generation result. We can see both of them were able to capture the atmosphere and core concept of the prompt. The Krea 2 output has more contrast. We can see its cloud being darker, whereas the Z-Image output looks cleaner and brighter. Also, the cloud's shape looks more natural in the Z-Image's output. Let's hit the Run button again and see how they perform. All right, this time the Krea 2 model took 22.626 seconds to finish, where the Z-Image model took 15.944 seconds, which means the Z-Image is again 41% faster. Zooming in on the two pictures, we can tell the result is similar to the first generation, where the Krea 2's cloud looks darker and less natural, with the Z-Image's cloud being brighter and the sun being clearer and vibrant. In fact, let's dive into the prompt itself and see how the cloud and the sunlight were described. There is the mentioning of sunset, casting a bright, fiery yellow and orange light that contrasts against the darker cloud, and the sky should be dusky. Now, with that specific description in mind, we can tell that the Krea 2's generation was actually more accurate. Its sky was indeed dusky. The fiery yellow and orange light was correctly contrasting the top of the cloud. The Z-Image generation, on the other hand, was ignoring the dusky sky, and the cloud was not dark as instructed. So it looks like the Krea 2 model is better at following prompt description, where the Z-Image cares more about the overall image balance. I'm going to give the Z-Image another chance to prove whether that assumption is true. All right, we've got our third run back, and the results are just as consistent as before. In terms of prompt adherence, Krea 2 is better. Z-Image has faster generation speed and the overall aesthetic, but it is less accurate. All right, next, let us get our second prompt from a random image. Notice in this prompt, there is a specific LeetSpeak term enclosed in quotation marks. Let's find out whether they can handle this prompt correctly. All right, both run are finished. Let's compare the generation time first. This time the Krea 2 model took 29.131 seconds to finish, and the Z image took 19.033 seconds. The Z image model is faster by 53%. Now looking at the two results, both look decent, with the Z image's color being more vibrant. However, on examining closely, we can see that the text at the bottom is different. It seems the Z image missed a letter A. Let's get back to our prompt and see what it was supposed to be. So it is the word random that has an A. The Krea 2 got it correctly, and the Z image got it wrong. It seems for rendering English words, Krea 2 is the better choice. Now let's zoom in and compare the image details. As you can see, neither model managed to get a clean face output. Our resolution is set to 1344 by 1344, so we're definitely not dealing with a low resolution image, yet the faces on both sides still came out distorted. Because the character is closer up in Krea 2's generation, the faces are larger, but the pixel artifacts are actually much more severe than on the Z image. Personally, I feel the Z image's faces look a bit more natural. And for the rest part of the images, the details all look natural and decent. Now let's give them another run and see if anything will improve. This time, the run times are 22.463 seconds for Krea 2 and 16.025 seconds for Z image. Z image was 40% faster. Now jumping over to image quality. At first glance, both outputs look great and hold up the standard we saw in our previous runs. However, looking down at the title banner, I noticed the Z image output didn't contain the Disney logo this time. Let's jump back to the prompt in a second and see which model actually got it wrong. Before that, let's zoom in a bit to compare the facial details. Oh my goodness, the facial detail is just horrible, especially the Krea 2 model's output. I don't get why this prompt is difficult for Krea 2 to render, because if you remember the performance in the VAE comparison episode, with that vintage style image of the 6 women holding cards, the facial detail was incredibly stunning. However, when it comes to this prompt, all the faces are obviously broken. Anyway, let's jump back to the prompt and see if there is anything worth noting. So I've noticed this prompt has explicitly specified each character's name. I am suspecting that maybe Krea 2 is intentionally filtering known characters' faces. Next, let's remove those names, give it another run, and see if the facial details will improve. I have also noticed the prompt clearly called for the Disney logo's existence, so the Z image definitely missed a core element here. This is just another clear example of the Z image falling short when it comes to prompt adherence. Alright, we've got the new result coming out as we speak, this time without any character names. Let's compare the speed again. No doubt the Z image will be faster, but probably at the expense of some precision. So again, the Z image is 44% faster for this run. It's interesting because this time it actually captured the Disney logo, but it's still struggling with text rendering. The word random is still misspelled. It dropped the initial R, and the letter O is completely cut in half. On the other hand, Krea 2 absolutely nailed the text rendering, spelling every stylized word perfectly. Zooming in on the faces, I don't really see any major improvement from Krea 2, even though we stripped out all the character names. It definitely looks like Krea 2 still has some room for improvement when it comes to facial rendering. Okay, with that information in mind, let's test out some more prompts and see how they compare. This time I will use this beautiful young lady as our base picture. Since the former prompt always results in bad faces, let's make it simple and easy for this one. Now since this picture is in portrait mode, I will change our latent aspect ratio to portrait as well. Let me change the longer side to 1920 pixels. Okay, we've got our simple prompt. Looks like the description is a very detailed one, which is actually good so our models don't have to guess what to generate. Alright, let's compare the speed. It's 34.864 seconds versus 23.968 seconds, which means the Z image is faster by 45%. Next, let's compare the two portrait generation results. Honestly, I think both generated images are okay-ish. Not quite perfect, but acceptable. After all, the composition of this prompt is somewhat simple. I just don't quite like either of the faces. You can easily get that fake AI look. They don't seem natural and certainly not pleasing. But other than that, there isn't really much to tell from this test. Let's change our prompt to a much more complex one. This time let's pick this image grid. This kind of complexity really tests how well a model handles composition and overall design. Alright, let's copy-paste the description and hit run. Okay, the final result has come out. Let's see how much time each model spent. So it is 35.293 versus 24.878, which means the Z image is 41% faster. Now, the overall look seems okay from both outputs. However, it is quite obvious that the Z image's output contains an identical character in two grid images. Let's zoom in and have a better look at the details. So one thing I have noticed is that the child character in the bottom left corner of the Z image output is completely photorealistic. Meanwhile, every other character on the screen, including all of Krea 2's outputs, are completely stylized illustrations. It is highly possible that the Z image messed up the style alignment here, but I do prefer its overall grid design over Krea 2's. Krea 2 pushes all the panels right against each other, which feels crowded and makes it hard to tell where the separations are. The Z image leaves some clean gaps in between, making the whole layout look a lot neater. Anyway, let's jump back to our prompt and see how the image should look like. Here it says that this image should contain 12 children's book covers, neatly arranged in 2 rows exactly, and each row should contain 6 grid images. So that makes the Krea 2's generations correct, and Z image failed in following this instruction. And would you look at that, there are all the detailed cover content for each grid image. So let's compare that with the outputs. Actually, let me move our prompt box here so it is much easier for us to compare. Let me also shrink the prompt box a bit, like this. So the first one is, "Oh, brother," followed by a wildness of dragons, and then "the great," and "chasing April." Looks like the front 4 are correct, and what is this? Can't tell what words those are. Looks like we've found another failed grid generation. And here for Krea 2, we've got the 5th grid image titled by "I hear oh, the wind, I see the something something." Let's see what exactly that title should be. Here, "I hear the wind, I see the..." So it looks like Krea 2 also got a mistake here. There should be no letter O. So this is what is supposed to be in the unreadable Z image, grid image. Z image totally failed in this grid. Okay, let's keep reading our prompt. The next should be "the mystery of mountain." Where is that? So Z image totally missed out this grid image. Impressively bad performance. Next up will be, we've reached to the second row. At this stage, I think there is no need for further comparison. The Z image has completely failed this prompt. It did not get the rows right, it missed the total panel count, and it couldn't get the actual content inside the grid right. Meanwhile, Krea 2 got most grid image correct, with only a few minor mistakes. I'm going to give the Z image a final chance to prove its capabilities. Our last comparison today is going to be this super chaotic cartoon character collage. Let's get our prompt text and start the generation. Alright, we've got the final results. From the zoomed out preview, we can already see that the Z image is struggling with this prompt. The prompt specifies that the patches must be heavily layered on top of one another to create a dense collage. Krea 2 executed this perfectly, creating a highly textured, overlapping flat lay. The Z image, on the other hand, generated each patch as its own distinct element, spreading them out with very clear, visible gaps across the canvas. So my takeaway is that the Z image prioritizes aesthetic appeal over prompt discipline. It's noticeably faster and excels at rendering natural-looking images, but it definitely falls short when it comes to strict prompt adherence and complex visual layering. With that in mind, let's draw our conclusion. In terms of generation speed, Krea 2 is consistently 40 to 50% slower than Z-image. But when it comes to prompt adherence, Krea 2 offers much better consistency and discipline. It is also more capable of doing complex layout compositions. So that sums up this comparison. I hope you enjoy the content. If you find it useful, please give it a like, and have a nice day.